thousands of migrants are expected to come flooding across the southern border. Now, today, we spoke with upstate Congressman Jeff Duncan on the expected surge and why the issue of immigration hasn't been solved, especially for a path to citizenship.
Look, ending Title 42 has actually been an attractant for migrants to come to this country. We saw today the largest single-day surge of folks entering our country in the history of the nation. And so we see, millions of people have come under the Biden administration into this country. We ought to be talking about border security. We ought to be talking about, catch and return, not catch and release into this country. And we're only talking about apprehension rates. What concerns me is the folks that have come into our country that had no encounter with law enforcement at all and are just in our nation. And we don't know who those people are. We don't know where they came from or what goals they may have in mind. Some may be nefarious goals. And so we ought to be very concerned about who's in our country. We ought to strengthen our immigration policy. Yeah, we ought to expand some of the immigration categories to provide skilled workers and laborers where needed. But we ought to secure our nation, and we have a Secretary of Homeland Security, which is charged with protecting our nation in the wake of 9/11, who has actually failed in his mission to secure our country because we're letting people in that we have no idea who they are. And so we ought to talk about national security and securing our border before we do anything on the immigration side. And there are some things we can deal with on that.
And the Homeland Secretary saying that there is a plan in place that the administration has been working on for a year now. So when Title 42 does end, what should we expect? And should we trust the White House that there is a plan in place? Is because it seems like there's a lot of finger pointing going on between the Republicans and Democrats.
Well, Title 42 was actually working to keep folks in Mexico. I haven't seen a plan out of the Secretary of Homeland Security yet. They're not implementing it. What I see out of the Homeland Security Department, the Biden administration, is an open border policy. For the Secretary to have a press conference today and say that the border is secure, in my world, that's BS. And Americans know it. We need to secure our border. We can determine who comes in. We shouldn't have the door off the hinges. We should have a door there, and it's an open door without a lock, where we open it and allow folks to come in that have a legal reason to come into the country, have a visa, and are coming here to work or seek residency. That's fine, but they do it through a legal process versus the illegality that we're seeing now, folks just coming in our country. And now we're seeing it up north in Canada, where people from Latin America have actually transited to Canada and trying to come across our northern border. Lord, we can't have two open borders allowing folks to stream into our country. We're a sovereign nation, and we should act like one.
A lot of discussion about the debt ceiling. Speaker McCarthy had a meeting with the president at the White House yesterday. You are set to have a subcommittee hearing the Department of Energy budget and the fiscal 2024 budget for the Department of Energy. How is that going to play into this budget that the House now passed, but it seems like it's going to be dead on arrival in the Senate?
Well, part of the debt ceiling negotiations is we put together a really good plan. It was our starting position to try to get the Biden administration and the majority leader in the Senate to actually come to the table. They were refusing to sit down with the Speaker of the House to approach a very, very difficult and important discussion, and that is raising the nation's debt ceiling, addressing our debt crisis, addressing our spending addiction, and actually making some reforms that are necessary. Work requirements for folks receiving welfare, but a lot of HR 1 energy package was in there for pipeline permitting reform and other things to help move our nation toward energy independence once again. But yet the Biden administration and Chuck Schumer failed to sit down with McCarthy. And when they do sit down, they're not in agreement. I saw the president's press conference earlier today. I believe they just want us to arbitrarily raise the debt ceiling, clean debt ceiling without any reforms to how we're spending money, why we're spending money, what we're spending money on. Republicans don't approach it that way. We want to make the reforms that are necessary to start ending our spending addiction and make the reforms to make our nation solvent once again. And right now we're $32 trillion in debt. And we're talking about raising the debt ceiling. And the Biden administration just wants to raise it, up the limit on the credit card so they can go back to Disney World? No, we're not about that. We're going to work on reforms to try to get our house in order here in this country.